generals. Nearly every ball is a funeral. And when we battle, brother, go and put your men on the boundary line. And if you give we a liquor, that is merely a hiccup. Look, you win the little battle, you lose the war. It's the same result every time. Everybody sing. Here come the West Indies. Here come the West Indies. Them rude boys gonna get you by degrees. Here come the West Indies. I tell you now, here come the West Indies. Here come the West Indies. Them bad boys gonna bring you to your knees. Here come the West Indies. Special request to the Trinity posse. And what about the Guyana posse? And what about the Jamaica posse?
And it's all over.
Despite their successes, the team were not highly paid. And after they had won the World Cup, Lloyd was approached by the West Indies Cricket Board with a derisory offer to his players.
Sir Clyde Walcott came to him and said that he had been authorized by the board to pay him £50 as some form of remuneration for their victory. And he was just so appalled at it. He said it made him almost want to cry.
This financial insecurity threatened to undermine the unity of Lloyd's team. And in 1983, 18 West Indian players were offered a lucrative one-off deal to break a Commonwealth agreement and play in apartheid South Africa.
Mattis, Clark, Croft and Rowe are among the players reportedly earning up to £70,000 each.
The big money on offer meant many, like fast bowler Colin Croft, would risk a lifetime ban from Test cricket.
In a sense, it was a bad decision on my part. But also, I never considered myself what I would call a professional cricketer. I played cricket professionally, which is a different thing in my head. Because in those days, there was no money in sports. You got to play, you enjoy yourself, and then somebody throws you by the wayside, and that's the end of that. You got to beg somebody for a job. Well, I decided a long time ago I'm not begging anybody for a job.
But the majority of Lloyd's team refused to tour South Africa and stayed loyal to their captain's commitment to black solidarity.
We were never going to go there. Although we were offered a lot of money, obviously, but money was not all there. It was pride and belief in getting things right in the world. And sportsmen of such, I think we play a very important part in trying to get things together. And so there's no way I would go there for love or money.
This setback only served to make Lloyd more determined. Through the 1980s, the West Indies improved every aspect of their cricket. Introducing a specialist fitness coach, they now trained like professional sportsmen, and the team swept all before them with ruthless efficiency.
And he's gone this time, caught it slim.
This team had a winning mentality, but executed it with style and swagger.
I'll see 600 on the board here at Texas. It was an era that was dominated by, I would say, just power play. You know, quick bowlers, aggressive batsmen, brilliant fielding.
The most dominant teams in the history of the game have always built their success around fast bowlers. Lloyd's innovation was the ability to field not 2 or 3, but 4 world-class pacemen, who each presented a different challenge to the opposition batsman.
Getting out of bed on a morning when you know you're going to face Holding, Roberts, Garner, Croft, maybe substitute Marshall for Croft, it's an effort to get out of bed.
Cricket, lovely cricket.
Oh, dear me.
This is how I saw it.
And you've got to bat against Michael Holding. You know that Mikey was probably doing out the quickest of their quartet. Great big long run-up. So you had lots of time to look at him. And he'd sort of come closer and closer very quickly towards you. But he had the most fluid action, pure silk. Everything worked. Everything was timed perfectly. And if it came at you at 95 miles an hour, well, it was on you mighty quickly.
Good catch. Draw ball too. Garner's gone.
Joel Garner with the extra height. And Joel could still bowl 90 miles an hour. It wasn't as though he was 6'8" and the rest of it in his hand, therefore, was, 10 foot, 10 foot up there. So he generated bounce at whatever pace, whether it was mid-80s or 90s.
And he's bowled him. So Gower goes for naught.
And then when Malcolm Marshall came through, Malcolm became maybe the greatest of them. He could swing the ball, he could cut the ball, he could bowl it quick, he could change his pace, he could bowl at the speed of light, he could attack you. You thought, well, where do you hide?
Wabal just begun. This is a very fast over from Marshall.
My thoughts coming up against any batsman was not really to try and impose myself on them mentally. It was all a matter of technicality. What this guy didn't like.
And a little flick at that and he's gone, caught 9.
If I didn't think he liked a short ball, I'd give him a short ball. If I didn't think he liked balls pitching outside the house, I'm coming back into him. Whatever I think he did not like, that's what I would be trying to do.
And he's caught, it's all over, Allison is gone.
In 1984, England, led by David Gower, were blown away by this pace attack, losing the series 5-0. Joyful West Indian fans now insisted that this wasn't just a series whitewash, their old colonial masters had been blackwashed.
And West Indies very convincingly win the series by a margin of 5 test matches to nothing.
The West Indies power cricket didn't endear them to sections of the English press, who were finding their domination hard to accept. A barrage of criticism was launched.
I don't think our players are out to injure people. It's not out about that. They were quick, and if you have fast bowlers, you're going to get hit. It's not out about that. It happens here now.
The carnival culture, imported into English grounds by West Indian fans, irritated some in the cricket establishment. The authorities, citing safety and public order, began to ban all musical instruments.
That drum will spoil the enjoyment of the day for many, many people who are sitting here and having a...
And ticket allocations to West Indian fans were also subject to restrictions.
The ticket system became where you couldn't have 2 West Indian fans sitting together. So they were all very sporadic. And being sporadic, you couldn't hear them in numbers. Well, I felt it was a bit harsh. Jealousy.
When Lloyd retired, Vivian Richards took over the captaincy. And 2 years later, in the Caribbean, the West Indies silenced the critics, again beating England 5-0. Their dominance was rubbed in the final test in Antigua, where Richards wrapped up victory with the fastest ever Test 100 off only 56 balls, a record which remains unbeaten.
People often ask me what the highlights of my cricketing career, and I mention those two series where we won 5-0. And the reason why I mention that is because not only because we beat England 5-0 twice, but because of the effort that was put in, the highly professional nature of the team. And I felt at the time the team was invincible.
This is not a one-man job. It's like guys who were in the trenches, well, or 1 or 2, whatever period of war, they see themselves as a band of brothers, and the accomplishment factor felt great after that.
Led by Richards, the Master Blaster, the Windies continued as undisputed world champions. And in 1991, when Richards walked out for an emotional and final farewell at the Oval, he departed as the West Indies' leading run scorer. At the same time, batsmen Gordon Greenidge and Desmond Haynes, wicketkeeper Jeff Dujon, and fast bowler Malcolm Marshall also retired. These players had carried the hopes of West Indians through an era of nationalism, which had seen all of the Caribbean islands become fully independent. By the time these players had retired, the Caribbean was adjusting to a dramatic shift. The age of nationalism had given way to the realities of a new globalized era. Having achieved political independence, these small countries struggled to compete with the world's larger economies. The result was rising inflation and unemployment. In this new world, it was no longer enough to cling to notions of black pride and identity.
For a lot of us, it is a real challenge to get through the day, get something to eat. That's not exaggeration. Trinidad has a lot of money, but for a lot of people in Trinidad, there's a lot of suffering. Real poverty you can't imagine.
Good evening and welcome to West Indies Cricket 101 on a Sunday night. We have our two analysts here, Dr. Vincent Adams and Basil Butcher Jr. Please share the link. Please share the live. Let everyone know that we are on. As it is with all West Indies cricket, one day we're shouting to the heavens, and another day we are just either sucking our teeth or throwing the heads back and say whatever. And so we opened up with that clip to, in a sense, warm our spirits and remind us that things were not always what they are today with our cricket, and that perhaps another world, another era is possible. Is possible. The clip ended, of course, with the linkage of cricket to economics and cricket to politics. And that is, of course, what C.L.R. James meant when he coined the term beyond a boundary. And it's beyond the boundary and not beyond the boundary. Very clinical in the use of language was James, beyond a boundary, because boundary there represents something larger than the cricket boundary. Always shifting, James would have given Worrell a note as he was leaving for that famous 1960-61 tour. Worrell apparently did not open the note until he got to Australia. And when he opened the note, James told him in the note that if you do well in Australia, it will show the colonials that we are ready for independence. And so it was the burden of our cricketers to prove to the colonials that we are ready for independence. James was famous with notes, Kwame Nkrumah was going back to Africa after studying at Lincoln University in the United States. And he ran into C.L.R. James, and James gave him a note to take to George Padmore in England because he was passing through England. Of course, he didn't open the note because it wasn't a note for him, it was a note for Padmore. And when he gave Padmore the note, Padmore read the note. He said, this young man, James is telling Padmore, this young man is a very good product and he will one day lead Africa. And asked Padmore to take him in under his wings while he was in London. And of course, Padmore did that together. They organized the Fifth Pan-African Conference in 1944. And Nkrumah left to go to Africa after then, and the rest is history. Ghana was the first sub-Saharan African country to get independence. In fact, Nkrumah was elected prime minister while he was in prison, and the rest is history. C.L.R. James, beyond a boundary, and how we would have loved to have James today to explain for us why, between 1970 and 1976 and 1995, we could have dominated the world in such a way. And since 1995, we are struggling. What is the sociological and explanation for that? All of us have tried, and we're going to try tonight again to deal with that subject. but we would have loved the James to really explain, because it seems to me that the answer lies beyond a boundary, beyond, in this case, the cricket boundary. You know, we had to endure again the embarrassment, the heartbreak of our team folding in 2 days and a session. How many times have we gone through that, people ask? You know, of course, on this program, we said it 2 weeks ago. You can't send such an inexperienced batting lineup to England and expect to win. So in a sense, we anticipated this. But when it happens, you know, because as West Indians, we are always hoping that at least the guys will carry it to the end, even if they lose, you know. They will carry it to the end. We will not fold in 2 days. It will go to the 4th day, perhaps the 5th day. If we lose, we're still. But, you know, here we are again. And the answer has to be somewhere beyond the boundary in this case. I felt so sorry for the youngsters because I think it was unfair to them. It is unfair to them. I mean, it's as if the administrators are willing our young people to fail, you know, to fail, right? I mean, one can argue that the great Lloyd team was beaten 5-1, but if those of us who were around during that 5-1 in Australia, we won at Perth, the fastest ground in Australia and around the world. We had individual successes, real individual successes. I mean, everybody remembers Fredericks 169 at Perth. But the introduction of Richards and Greenwich didn't do too well. But I mean, our fast bowlers, Roberts, Olden, and so although we lost, we knew that something came out of that tour. And you listen to Craig Braithwaite, Craig Brathwaite, struggling to find some positives. And really there weren't any. There weren't any. You know, I mean, out of the 5-1, they were positives because it was out of the ashes of the 5-1 that we actually introduced the building blocks of the great team that dominated for 2 decades. But here we are. But cricket is in our blood. Cricket is in our veins. Cricket is in our heads. Cricket is in our minds. Cricket is the way we walk. I still, not as much as when I was a boy and when Vincent and Basil were boys. When you see men walking down the road and square cutting, men walking down the road and playing the perfect, you know, you're walking and you know, back in the days, I still see 1 or 2 people do it. And that's when I say cricket is in everything we do. They don't express it like I said, you know, I was walking on campus one day, it's about 2 decades ago. And, you know, I went to a walk and I fancied myself as an off spinner when I was growing up. So I do a little off spin thing, and the little white boy on campus got over the way, trying to hurt me. I had to explain to him that this has nothing to do with you. It's a West Indian thing. He ended up in my class, and I taught a course called Sports as Black Nationalism, and he said, he told the class about his encounter with me when he saw me first, and he didn't know he was going to end up in my class. In fact, when he walked in the class and he saw me, he said, "You were the guy who was trying to hurt me." But we West Indians, win or lose or draw, we're still not giving up on it. Let me bring in my brothers because they are going to be able to make sense of it more than I have done or attempt to do. Dr. Adams.
Hey, Dr. Hines and Basil, how are y'all
Basil,
doing?
how y'all doing?
Good
Good,
afternoon, Vincent. Good afternoon, Dr. Hines.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to your listeners
Yeah.
and viewers.
Well, you know, my introduction, it wasn't too hot. I mean, here we are. If it had gone the 5 days, it would have ended earlier today. Would have been fresh in our memories. But not unexpectedly, our boys folded within 2 days and a session. And of course, we predicted it. But even though we predicted it, as I said, when it happens, you know, it brings you back to reality. You all saw the clip that I played at the beginning of the program, and the linkage of cricket to economics and politics and sociology, made so popular by CLR James. But the documentary there was highlighting what they call the era of nationalism, and linking that to the performance of our players. But the issue of Crofty, I think, with that formulation, which I've always found interesting, I was playing cricket professionally, but I was not a professional cricketer. And I've always been intrigued by what the Marxist-Leninists will call that the dialectics. And I want to start us up there because I'm not as vocal as I used to be with it, because I think I now understand our society better. But 15 years ago, I used to be livid at the cricketers for running after money and neglecting the Caribbean. I'm still not at peace with it. But I think I understand what's going on in the young men's head, in terms of money and the nation and so on and so forth. And every time I think about it, I come back to that formulation by Crofty, which I want to start off with. Vince, what do you make? You would have known Croft because you would have played with him, played against him in local cricket. Because Crofty played early and then he played 1 or 2 matches as I remember it. And then he was in the wilderness for quite a while until around 1976-77. He came back and the rest is history. So you would have played with him. What do you make of that formulation? Because I think it's more than a statement. Yeah, and how applicable is it to what we are grappling with today?
Yeah, I where my position stands with these players and money. Like I say it all the time. I believe in loyalty to your home country and playing for pride. But then, and of course, the thing that I really admire Crofty for, he's very honest and candid, and he articulates his position very well, the way that he feels. And then you've got to look at the well-being of these players. I mean, we on our side, we look at our players. They're playing for us. They're, whether they do good or bad, it's affecting us. And we are expecting that they must sacrifice themselves. However, they have got to also look out for their well-being, their financial well-being for themselves and their future and their families. And I think, like Lawrence Rowe, for example, very close friend of mine, I saw the suffering of him. I spent time with him and we talked over and over. Lawrence Rowe, because he went to South Africa, he really suffered financially even afterwards. He was even banned. They took down all of his pictures from Sabina Park, where he was the biggest hero. They just took it down. And he was persona non grata. Here is the hero of Jamaica, and he became persona non grata. So he suffered, and I'm sure a lot of folks suffered, and even Crofty and those folks, you see what happens to them after cricket, which is exactly And I've got to always bring up Basil's father, which is some of the things that he told me when when I got into that accident. He was the one who forced me to go to university for this same exact reason. And what he said, and never forget those words, that everybody wants to be around, you're famous, you're aspiring to be famous, you're getting there. But when you're about 30, 35, that time is past, they're going to be looking for the next Vincent Adams, and you're going to be left out into the cold. We've seen it happen over and over to a lot of our players in the West Indies, because when you're done taking care and winning for the West Indies and winning for the people, nobody takes care of you. There is no type of fund or anything that makes sure that these players are taken care of in the West Indies. So you've got to understand, because you can get an injury, which is what Basil father told me that again. What happens if you get an injury at the age 25 and you can't make it any place? So those guys, they'll look at it from that direction, or you get dropped. I mean, there's nothing guaranteed. You can get dropped from a team and you never ever make it back for whatever reason. So, in as much as, I always say that we should take disciplinary actions against those players when they don't want to play for their country. That's their choice. I have no problems with those choices. But, if they make that decision, that ought to be the decision. We ought to allow them to do that, but don't pick them for the country. But at the same time, I've always supported their decision to try and take care of themselves financially. All of us have our own jobs that we make sure we take care of our family. That's their profession. That's their profession. So I empathize with them, no question about it. And so Crafty, as usual, he's very intelligent. But the thing is with him, he's very candid also. And when he says something, those words, those simple words, it has meaning.
Basil Crofty's dialectical formulation, and I am I play cricket professionally, but I'm not a professional cricketer.
Yeah, because I think that is a reflection of what international cricket was in those eras, where Croft and those guys were still in that era where you still had a job and you were playing international cricket. They were probably the last set of guys who still, some of them, when they came home, they still had a quote unquote 9 to 5. So really, were you really a professional cricketer? Because to be a professional cricketer, that would be your sole and only profession, right? And I listened to something that he said there also about going to South Africa and starting, but it was a bad decision in reflection. And that's good to hear, because at times he was defiant about that decision to go in terms of the backlash and some of the political backlash and so on, and other things. But I think cricket is interesting about international cricket in that for West Indies, more than anywhere else in the world, we have never been able to make that full transition from semi-pro, amateur, to a fully professional environment. We still are not. For example, we got the professional regional tournament, all these franchises, and I still maintain these guys, the only thing professional about that is those guys are getting paid to play cricket. Nothing else about their whole approach, the system, the structure, the way it's administered and everything is not professional. It's still in the dark ages. That's why we're so behind. And then what we saw in England is a reflection of that lack of professionalism in our structure, high performing, accountability, and all those various things. So, because look, other parts of the world, cricket was, guys used to work just like West Indians and play cricket. But they have made the transition to where it's a professional environment in every aspect of how they do things. You know, I just came back from Barbados, and we were the Garfield Sobers on the 19 tournament. They finally restarted it after the pandemic. And there were two teams from Australia. I mean, those guys weren't more talented than our guys from the United States. But you could see the kind of coaching that they're exposed to from ground level up, that they had something more than all the other teams that we played against in the tournament. And they weren't more talented than us. We should have beaten them, but you could just see that professionalism and the coaching that they obviously receive in Australia, our guys don't receive in the Caribbean. And a U.S. team, which I was coaching, we got to the finals, right? Now, you tell me something. You would expect a U.S. youth team going to Barbados to play in a tournament like that 20 years ago or so on to even make noise? No, they'd have got the doors blown off. But the flip is happening, right? Now we got upcoming. I saw there's a series between the under-19 U.S. women and the under-19 West Indies women. I will not be surprised if the U.S. women beat them up bad. All of those things are microcosms of where West Indies cricket is from a professional perspective.
And I'm drawn to what you said there about the guys are now getting paid, but the cricketers not kept pace with the money that they're getting. I mean, it's not a whole set of money when you compare to other countries, but at least they are being paid as professionals. And a comment that I came across from Brian Lara this past week, in which he said, you can pour millions of dollars into West Indies cricket. It's not going to turn around. And that struck me. And to hear you actually say it here today, and I quickly drew the connection between the two the two statements. And I want you to elaborate on that, and then I'll go back to Vincent on it. I mean, you're paying, the whole thing was that you are not being paid, all right?
Yeah.
So now you're being paid, right? And but you're not lifting the standard of your game.
Right.
What's happening there?
No. Just because we got to break this thing down to the microcosm in each region. For example, Barbados by far has the best cricket structure in the Caribbean. Is not even a close second. Barbados is the only place in the region that has primary school cricket competition that's been going on for years. The Harmon Griffith tournament, secondary school competition. Their schools play in the BCA tournaments, right? Second division or intermediate, right? They're the only place in the region that still has 3-day club cricket. Yet, Barbados are not producing world-class players. So right there, they have the structure. And now you have to ask the question, why Barbados are not producing world-class players, right? And some other parts of the region that are more decrepit have been able to produce a few players that we could say that could be ascending to them. Look at this. Look at Guyana, for example. Right now, Guyana have on the cusp of producing fast bowlers more than Barbados, who historically was the place that produced fast bowlers. Guyana right now, we got at least 4 guys in Guyana that bowl 90 plus miles an hour. All of them from Barbados, right? So I don't wish the guys in Guyana if they gotta play Barbados in Jones Cup.
You mean the guys in Demerara and
Demerara batsmen, right? But I'm saying that to say, and I spoke about that when I was in Barbados. I had an interview and I spoke about that, and the guys agreed with me. And for several, one of the things that always hinder us is the politics and putting square pegs in round holes. There are lots of people in the region that have the knowledge but are not placed in those positions to make decisions about the development of players. You could like the game, you could be academic and all of that, but there are certain nuances if you're not exposed to the game on an intimate level and understand the process that it takes to develop an elite player. You're going to be missing a lot of steps and leaving things out. Look, I'll give you another one right here. So Randy Roberts right now is in North Carolina doing, Alvin Kalichiran called him down to do some, Alvin coaches there. So youngsters in North Carolina now are being able to get the expertise, the knowledge about bowling fast from one of the best who ever do it. How many of our youngsters in the region, many Antiguans don't even want to call Sir Randy Roberts for whatever stupid reason, right? Those kinds of things, as Vincent would tell you, what are part and parcel of the development of a player. We didn't have fancy words fit back in the days where older player would come and talk to you about blah, blah, blah. Now we know the term mentorship is a fancy term we would use today, right? And all those things are critical to the development of a player. We have removed that almost entirely out of our structure because those people who have been in charge of our cricket for the last how much years do not understand such critical things for our players' development.
Vincent, I want to bring you in here because here is the whole issue: money. So the guys now are being paid, not the best, but at least they're on retainer contracts. They're collecting a check at the end of the month or whenever, so they're being paid. But the level of cricket has not kept up. Now, Basil is saying the reason is that you have the structure, now they're being paid. Barbados has the structure, but wrong management. What he calls square peg in wrong hole as the reason. Your take.
Yeah, and I totally agree with the structural part is fundamental. And I go back to my time and even before my time, when you start with school cricket, that's what builds the pride. I remember when I played for my school, the school used to get a holiday when we play a game. So you're on the field there, and you're not only, the pavilion is filled with, you see all the uniforms, your school uniform out there. So you're playing for that school. And then of course they picked, they would pick an Upper Demerara team, and then they pick an Upper Demerara East Bank. So it's a it's starting with a small territory, becomes that territory until you get to the national, but it's all pride. Now, so nowadays they don't have that type of a structure. Now the other thing that, in order to be fair, well, one of the things that we see, and Basil mentioned Andy Roberts being in the area, one of the things that we see, for example, look at Jimmy Anderson. Jimmy Anderson has announced his retirement, in this test match, and he was immediately hired as a bowling coach for that team in the next test match. Where are our Andy Roberts, Clive Lloyd, and all of our great players around those national players? So again, it comes back to the management of how do we get these players ready. The other thing is, in all fairness, see, the players of the past era, and we saw it exposed here in this English tour. The players of the past era, guess where they basically grew up? In England.
League cricket, county cricket.
League cricket, county cricket, that's where they tightened up their skills with the moving ball and on and off the pitch. All of our top players for the West Indies played county cricket.
Yeah.
And then of course the rules were changed. So the younger players are not getting a chance. They're not getting that exposure. Right now, the English players, they're right probably in the middle of their league. So those guys are ready. And we should understand that. However, we should devise a solution to that. For example, you can't tell me we cannot get wickets, even if you gotta bring in turf from someplace. The St. Lucia wicket, for example, is probably the best wicket in order to tighten skills. You know, it seams, it has pace. We can prepare wicket for those type of conditions. And before taking kids on a tour to England, I would spend the last month or two preparing them on such a wicket. If we go into India, I would prepare them, you know, come to Guyana with all of our best spin bowlers, India or Trinidad. But we just pick up players and say, well, okay, it's time for you to go. And especially a team such as this, which we anticipated this was going to happen. No, you know, no experience whatsoever under these conditions, especially you coming up against, you know, a world class bowlers such as Jimmy Anderson and those type of under those conditions that you've not seen in real time before. So those are the kinds of things. But again, and I believe when we have deviated from having cricketers running Cricket West Indies, I think that's when we started falling down. Because remember the last cricketer we had was Clyde Walcott.
Right.
But you see, if you have people in those positions at the top, they would understand, you know, what's really needed and how do you develop players. But these guys are strictly business. Cricket has become a business, and now we're putting people in to manage cricket in the West Indies that they never, probably some of them never even played a whole lot of cricket. But here they are, they're managing it, and it's all about money. In our time, it wasn't about money. And I think that's the big difference.
And of course, even when we hire cricketers, we are not hiring them because of their cricketing skills. We're hiring them because of other skills they have. Take Neil Bascom, not Neil, Miles Bascom. He played cricket for the Windwards, but he's not hired because of his knowledge of cricket. He's hired because he's supposed to be a whiz kid, right? And look, we have a force five, 95 test matches, 86 of those the captain, right? And when you come top, I went back after Lara made that observation, and when you look at the amount of cricket the English force five in this team played, you're talking about 300 and something test matches versus our 95. Take away Craig Braffett and 12, 13 for the rest of them. And we've talked about it on this program before. I understand, based on a hint that Basil gave, that Hope didn't want to go. I don't know about Chase, why he's not there. The other boy is injured from Jamaica. King is injured. And if you look around, there are a couple more who could and should have been on that team. I still think that although we have some of the players don't want to play, I still think the selectors are not getting it right. I think we have gotten into this thing about roles and not picking your best player. Your best players. I always think that your best players, regardless of whether you're an open batsman or what have you, when you're in trouble, you can't talk about roles. You have to talk about your best talent. By God, Rohan Kanai opened and kept when he first came into Test cricket. Clyde Walcott used to keep, and Viv Richards opened in that disastrous store of Australia in 75, 76. And so this whole business of roles. So Louis made some runs, God bless him, and he goes and he plays because you want an opener. So he's an opener, so you play him. And you're not thinking about the others in the team who are perhaps better players, who can give an account. We play an 11 in which we shorten the batting, which is suspect in the first place, rather than lengthen the batting, right? I still think the selectors are not getting it right. Yes, some of the boys don't want to play, but I don't think we are managing what we have well in terms of selection. I understand to my dismay, that they've sent Isaiah Thorne to Barbados to play on the 19 cricket rather than have him around the team. And I'm asking myself, what kind of madness is this? But anyhow, I am an amateur. You all are the professionals. Basil, help me out with my travails.
You see, one of the things we got one fundamental thing we gotta always remember: the West Indies board never produced players. Players are produced in the various territories, right? Now, where I think West Indies board has dropped the ball throughout this thing is that they have not held those territorial boards accountable for all their mismanagement and all of that stuff. They have not provided the leadership to those boards in terms of the oversight and how to professionalize and blah blah and all of that stuff. They have done it in piecemeal at times. Like right now, they would say, okay, we don't have the fitness standards for guys to make the team, but we replace that. We have an S&C, which is strength and conditioning coach. Each franchise has a strength and conditioning coach that now they're funding that thing now. But each franchise got a strength and conditioning coach. But you watch a West Indies team, would you say the fitness is not a problem? It is clearly a problem, right? We saw it in the World Cup. So some of these things, I wonder how much thought goes into it when they make some of these changes. Now we got an interesting new selection policy. You're hearing.
I will want you all to talk about that later.
Yes, but the Thorne situation was surprising to me. I saw him in Barbados because I went to watch a local match Saturday gone, and while at the match, a youngster played for Barbados, Kevin Wickham, was playing. His club was playing another club. He confirmed to me that Thorne had left England because I'd heard it through the grapevine. So I text Thorne, and he said, "Yeah." So I said, "Where you there?" And he texts me back and show he in Barbados. I said, "What?" I said, "In Barbados." He said, "Where you at?" I tell you, 10 minutes later, he was at the hotel. And he explained to me, he said, "Mr. Butcher, the media said that I went there as a developmental player. But that's not what the West Indies board said in the email to him. They said you're going to be able to, you're going to participate in the pre-tour camp and the one warm-up game, and then you're back to the region." I think that is a nonsensical approach. Wow. I think Thorne should have been able to stay the entire tour to see up close how guys prepare for Test cricket, how they plan, all of those things in that environment that he would have taken away learning. Is Thorne going to learn? Is Thorne going to, his game going to be, the needle of his game going to move forward playing in under 19 cricket? No, it's not. You know, it's not going to move forward. Unfortunately, from the Guyana perspective, Thorne, because the Guyana board thought Thorne was a development player too, thought he was going to be in England for the duration, so they selected somebody instead of him. Now that youngster had to get removed. Now this youngster, suppose this is his last year to play age group cricket. You got selected, right? Because of miscommunication, you know, between the two entities. And then at the last minute, you get a call, "Sorry, son, Mr. Thorne is playing, so you are taken out." Now, you know, all of those things add up, right? And those are kind of things could cause a youngster to just stop playing the game, because we've had young, talented players who quit playing cricket when they felt they got a raw deal at youth level and so on and so forth. But the issue it remains, because I said this, in my view, there needs to be an audit of every territorial board in the way they go about managing cricket within each territory. And I'm not talking like the director of cricket they went around the different territories and make meeting with the franchise. Now the franchise is not more like for Guyana, for example, the franchise don't produce players in Guyana. You gotta go and talk to the people, Joshua Cricket Association, Barbies Board, and all of those people who are involved in club cricket to hear the challenges they're facing, and so everything could be synchronized as a high performing unit from the bottom up, right? But that didn't happen because we want to make sure that the practice, the way guys practice, the way guys conditioning, and all those things are up to par to be elite cricketers. You ain't do that. So, you know, this I asked that directed question, the director of cricket, and he said they felt the visit was successful. I disagree, right? Because until you deal with the grassroots, which is our club and school cricket, that is the part of our cricket we have allowed to deteriorate over the years. The standards just went through the ground, that it's rotted. And until you can you get that foundation, it's like you're building a house on sand. The foundation of West Indies cricket is in disrepair, and it has never been addressed by the West Indies Cricket Board, and to a lesser extent, the territorial boards in any systematic manner.
Dr. Vincent Adams, selection. Talk to us.
You know, for the most part, I normally like to trust the selectors, because except if you've got selectors that you can trust, obviously, but I normally like to trust them because when you pick selectors, these are supposed to be people who are experts. They're classified as experts, so they're on the ground, they're with the players day in day out, really looking at scores. So when they make the decision, I like to trust them. But this whole Thorne thing, I just saw him on television in one game, and from the time I saw him, I said, God, this is some kind of a talent. So I'm saying now that, and Basil is absolutely correct. I said they should bring him immediately and be part of the team, even if he's not playing. Yeah. Just being around. And I can tell you from my personal experience, and you ask any cricketer, your best training ground, especially if you go on a tour. I remember my very first tour when I played in Trinidad in the under 19. Never played on the Trinidad wicket. Guyana wicket was totally different at the time. Them times it never used to play like they're playing now. Totally different. And I was a front footer. When it's not easy to play in your front foot in Trinidad because the ball seeing and it bouncing and it's slow. Because you normally drive through in Guyana. And would you believe, and I made some good scores in Trinidad in that series. And when I came back to Guyana, you could not believe the improvement in playing spin bowling. I just suddenly became such a adept at playing spin bowling just from that tour. So rather than going all in your front foot, it's easy picking up the line and length and you come back off your back foot. That I never did before. So at tour, you learn so much because remember you're in the nets every day if you're not playing the game and you're bowling against the best or you're batting against your best bowlers every single day. So when you come back, you're fit and ready and you're a hell of a player. Now, in terms of the CWI management of cricket in the West Indies, I know Basil said to do audits. No, they're the oversight body. Mm-hmm. They should have people, as a matter of fact, they should be hiring people to go out in these territories and to make sure there's a daily oversight, not to leave the Guyana Cricket Board to do whatever they want to do, which is exactly what's happening in Guyana, for example. Not to leave them there. You set some rules and some ground rules and the expectations. It's like a big organization. The CWI is head of the organization because the product is to produce the best team, not for Guyana or not. Their interest is to produce the best team for the CWI. And that's where they should be held accountable to the CWI to be going around making sure you've got the right persons to go to this territory and provide oversight, and they have to comply. And if they don't comply, you hold them accountable somehow. But we don't have that. Every territory, I guess, Basil is closer to it than I am, but every territory they do their own thing, and that's why we're in this dilemma. Everything to me, because I always learned in my profession, the buck stops one place at the top, and the top is the CWI, and they're doing a miserable job of managing cricket in the West Indies.
I just want to add something, Doctor.
Go ahead, Basil.
What Vincent is talking about. I said something because we got to look at things short term, long term, because we can't continue to be languishing in this thing like this. So we got to take some short term measures that would morph into long term. And one of the things I said along the lines of Vincent talking about is CWI should have a high performance program in every territory that is managed by them. So
that's right.
The coaches and everybody that are running it is hired by them. It's not the Guyana board, the Barbados board, the Trinidad board, CWI. And they manage it based on the best practices, high performance that the CWI set out, right? So our players from regional level to international level, when they're at home, they're in this program, because we cannot continue to see players year after year, we're not seeing improvement. People think because a guy makes 450 last year, then this year he makes 600, he improved. No, it's just that maybe last year, them guys held on to the catches. The next year, they don't hold on to the same catches. Improvement is when you see a difference in approach. You see tightness in the technique. The players become more understanding of their game. You could see when the player walks out to bat, for example, you could see this player is so confident in the way they play the stroke play and so on, that there, as a bowler, you say, bye, today it could be a long day if we don't deal with this man here. But that's the problem. And that's a short-term solution that can morph into that you would then have a high-performance system being facilitated from ground up throughout the structure. I said something too, using Guyana as an example. Now we get the Isle people, right? The Isle people in Guyana, right? And they get a lot of blows for their rightfully so. And I said, why don't a group of people in Guyana, cricket people, put together a proposal, high performance proposal for the upliftment of cricket in Guyana, and carry it to them and say, here, y'all fund this here for we, and show where it could be sustained through their sponsorship over a period of years, right? Because that is what's going to need to happen. And what has been going on, we have been running away. West Indies board has been running away, in my view, from the fundamental problem, and have been doing patchwork at the top, like making it seem like they're doing something. And we've been running away from the real problem, which again, as I said earlier, is the foundation of our cricket, and holding those territorial boards to account.
Well, you guys have given us the macro, but
let me add.
I still want to come back to the micro. Go ahead.
Yeah. Here is this, Dr. Hines, quickly. In terms, and that's an excellent observation and idea Basil came up with. And I remember even when I was in Guyana, the country manager for Exxon, not Rutledge, the other guy before him, never saw cricket, didn't know what the hell it is. And I had a conversation with him. I said, here, if you want to get the buy-in of the people of the Guyana, get involved in cricket, sponsor, even do because people, and even football, and immediately the guy never saw cricket. The guy sponsored immediately, and I remember the very first day that he went to the stadium to see cricket, and that was how they got involved. But the current government, and this is not anything political, any statement, the current government, instead of doing that, the government has them building a sports stadium like at Palmaria. They're building a sports stadium. That is good. But you can build whatever you want, which is this infrastructure thing that they're so hell-bent on. But how are you going to fulfill the whole purpose or the intent of using that infrastructure if you don't have people to use it. So it's not a case of putting up big fancy infrastructure that looks good. So there's no thinking behind it. But Basil is correct. As favorite as they are, Exxon to me, and they're willing to jump on board because that's all part of their public
Public
relations thing.
relations. Yes,
You know, so
exactly.
they're willing, but we do not have the people who can go and talk to them in an intelligent way and get them to come on board as to the purpose and to benefit from it.
Yeah, yeah. Let's get back to the micro and what's happening here in England, because I think there are a couple of things that we still have two test matches to go, and I mean, we got good stamina in the Caribbean. We have to have, given what we have endured with our cricket. But I mean, even the best stamina at some point got to say, this is enough. Listen, and I'm not picking on any individual player. I'm only using the example to make a larger point. Young Cock Mackenzie, he went to Australia. I think he gave a reasonably good account of himself compared to the other batsmen out there. But he came back to our domestic competition and performed miserably. All right. Chandrapal didn't give a good account of himself in Australia. He came back, didn't redeem himself in our competition. And quite rightly, you said, by take a rest, I hope they tell him to go and work on technique and so on and so on and so forth. But Cork Mackenzie, we ignore what he didn't do in the domestic competition. I looked at him in the domestic competition, and technique. But we take him to Australia because he made a couple of 50s in Australia. So we take him to England. He goes, of all places, to England, and the technique is exposed from the first ball. Now, I'm not picking on Mackenzie. I'm just giving that example to say there is no consistency in terms of the way. I think our domestic competition has to count for something. If you are good, you have to beat up people in the domestic competition. If you're good. And if you can beat up people in domestic competition, I'm carrying you to England, where that ball is seaming around. I mean, Atkinson took 7 and 5, 12. Wow. And I checked the banner age. He's 26 years old. He's been playing first-class cricket for the last 8 years. So it's not a poo-poo. He's playing his first test match, but he got a whole lot of experience.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I feel sorry for Mackenzie. I looked at him. Atenez still don't know where his off stump is. And how are we? I mean, I think it's cruel what the selectors are doing to those boys. No, I'm coming to Brother Sinclair, who clearly, for me, he performs, whether the ball is in his hand, whether he's batting, or whether he's fielding. He has, to me, the best attitude that I see for a young man in the game. He gave an account of, he did well in the one match. He played in Australia. He comes home. His batting improves. He's done well as an all. You take him to England and you put him on the bench. He's going to be able to lengthen that batting. You leave him out. You shorten the batting. Where's the thinking behind the selection policy? You all tell me, man.
I think we got to be a little bit careful here, because
yes,
Moti vindicated his selection with the way he bowled, right?
All right.
So
all right.
Right now, we got 7 guys in that team that we could put the moniker on Sarah Battles, from the keeper up to the captain.
Right.
Right. Why are we going to have an 8th person to bat? I mean, these guys have to come up and do their job. No, I agree with you. One of the things I said following the Australia series, I will be looking very keenly at all of those players that went to Australia, at their performances when they come back home in the first class tournament. I was expecting and looking to see, I wanted to see what learnings they would have brought from Australia into their games in the first class season. One of the only people that, from a batting perspective, the only person I could see that I saw that was young Sinclair, right? And I was on a program with him, listening to him talk about all the various things that he learned about Test cricket for that short sojourn there in Australia. Mackenzie was totally disappointing. The guy from what you call it, Dominica, Hodge. He had some bright spots.
He had a big 100.
Yes, he had a big 100.
But
Athanaze didn't do, really didn't do anything. And when you talk about beating up, Mr. Chase came and played one game and showed what you're supposed to do when you're an international player and you come down to this first class. He came and played a dominant 100. He was destroying them, and then when it took to put salt on the wounds, he went and take 6 wickets, right? But we didn't see Chase as a viable option because to go to England, because look, we can't go there. And my apprehension was you can't carry such a green middle order in conditions in England. We know historically England has been the graveyard for many a good players that you put together. We whole batting unit that were better than we whole batting unit put together. And England has been a graveyard for many of them. We have had many players that we talk about in West Indies lower that had to go to England several times before they finally worked out playing in England. And some of these guys, not only that, they were playing professionally in England too. So going to England with such a green team, you're always going to be up against the wall. And I don't understand why Mr. Chase wasn't in there. I would love for the West Indies director of cricket and the lead selector to explain why you pick Louis as a replacement because of Roach, when it's clearly you have a big hole in your batting lineup, to bring a guy who comes in that actually can bat in the top 6 and is a very useful bowler. So you're getting a 2-in-1 player plugging up. So for example, Dr. Hines, you then can actually play a Sinclair, right? With Chase in the lineup, because now you got a whole bunch of bowling options and your batting lengthened, right? So I thought that was a mistake on their part. As similarly to I'm still trying to wrap my head around Torn coming back to the Caribbean. And the last point I want to make to you, you said something very interesting. And I'm going back till all the way to probably 2000 or 1999 or something like that. When Roger Harper took a A-team, West Indies A-team to South Africa. He was the coach for the team. He had Sarwan and a bunch of other guys in the team. The South Africans beat us handedly. And one of the things Roger made the point at that time, he said, when you go down the list of the South African players, guy play 41st class, 51st class. We guys playing 10. Now, even this guy that played for England here, Jamie Smith, his test debut. Jamie Smith got over nearly 61st class games behind his belt, and he's 23 years old.
He's 23.
Right? So that experience counts for a lot. Look, South Africa got a guy, and we're going to see him. He coming to the Caribbean. Guy named Bellingham. You saw when Bellingham made his debut against India earlier, late last year.
Yes.
He looked like a guy who had been playing test cricket for about 15, 16 or more test matches in his first test match. Why? Again, because of the volume of first-class cricket experience he had playing both in South Africa and in England. Because even the captain of the South Africa team said he didn't look like a first-time player, right? And those are the things you see. The English players, because of their first-class experience, the vast amount, they come into the test match understanding the games and just fit in, right? Where our guys are like a deer in headlights for the most part.
Yeah, and I mean, I sympathize with you with what the point you made about we have to be very careful. We have 7 batsmen to bring in. I really don't think I'm going to admit that Jason Holder used to be a number 6, number 7. He's not a number 6 batter. He's not. No. Jason Holder should fight for his place in the team as a bowler.
Yes.
Not as a I think Sinclair should have been there in that all-rounder role. And let Jason Holder fight with the fast bowlers for his place. So I wasn't advocating for Sinclair to come in for Moti. Right? And I didn't want to pick on Jason because he's been a servant of our cricket. But he's no longer your number 6 batter. Vincent, I bring you in, but don't beat up on me because I get back up. I get back up on the screen there, right? So be careful of beating up. Good evening, Blake. I remember you very well, although it's been more than a decade since you were in my class. And yes, I'm still at it. Must have been one of my students who took my sports club, class.
Yeah.
I think Blake might have been from South Africa. You gotta remind me. Yeah. Go ahead, Vincent.
Yeah. So well, first of all, I mean, to me, it was unbelievable that they would leave out Chase in that. I mean, that was mind-boggling. When I saw it, I thought he was injured. But here's the other thing in terms of selection, Dr. Hines. With Mackenzie and Hodge especially, they did fairly well in South Africa. Normally when you pick a team, you pick it from the last series. And especially when there's no competition. There's nobody to come. It's not like a long time when Butchon Kanai and Seymour Norse, you have Renford Pinnock, Peter Lashley and all them guys making runs like rain. Nowadays, them guys you make a little 50 and you believe that you've arrived. So there's no competition. So I didn't have any problems with them going. However, again, what we said, going to England, it's a different kettle of fish. Okay, especially in your first exposure to that English condition, and these English bowlers that are well prepared, top class players, and it comes down to Dr. Hines. Mental. I always learn from the big boys that when you're at that level, your mental strength is 90% of your batting. 90%, because all y'all could cover drive, you could on drive, you could cut, you could do all these type of things. However, it is that ability to concentrate and stay there as long as possible. I'll never forget the big Clyde Walcott. I used to make 60 and 70 all the time, and Clyde Walcott called me one side one. He said, you got to be the best 60 and 70 batsman. He said I cannot believe. He said, let me tell you something. He said, if you can make 10, you got to know to make 20. And if you can make 20, you got to know to make 40. And if you can make 40, you got to know to make 80. And then you got to know how to make 160. He said, because remember, your early part of your innings is the hardest part. However, to stay there is that mental strength that I thought, like a Chandra Paul, for example. Chandra Paul don't pay no fancy, but guess what? He has some there, and he his limitations. And that is why this boy Sinclair, I think that he, in addition to his ability, by the way, and he's probably one of the best fielders also. So it's not just bowling. And the guy has mental toughness. I saw the 100 that he made at the time when he made it. To me, that demonstrated his mental toughness at his young age. So we've got, I always say, and Basil hear me say this, I would get rid of half of them, all them coaches, them batting coaches. I know what I replace them with? Psychologists. It becomes mental. Look, I look at Louis, and by the way, I'm impressed with Louis, the opening batsman, because
I think yes.
He showed that mental toughness. Of course, he needs to tighten up on certain things too, but he showed that mental toughness. And that's the kind of thing that we need, is somebody to go there, show that mental toughness, to stick around. You know, another guy was Charlie Davis. A lot of people don't know Charlie Davis average 54. Okay? I know what Charlie Davis tell me. He said, you make runs. When I leave the pavilion, I never look, and I bat in, I don't look at the scoreboard. I just tell them boys in the pavilion, I can see at tea time. I can see back in at lunchtime. And you bat, you bat for time. And as long as you're there, the runs will come. But it's that mental toughness to stick around that is missing in the West. But I like this boy. I think if he gets an opportunity, I think he's gonna make use of it. This Sinclair kid. So I'm hoping that they give him a break in the next test.
Yes. Before we go, brothers, I want us to deal with some cricket in the United States. I mean, Basil, you just came back from Barbados with the under-19 team there, and Vince, you are still involved, although from a distance, with what's happening with the cricket there in the United States. And of course, we do have some connection there because our players were, in a sense, the pioneer players in modern USA cricket. Not so now, as you all pointed out the last time we spoke. What's happening there that we should know about, Vince?
Well, of course, it's over the news. I know Basil's side.
Yeah, I did. I saw the Forbes.
Yeah, the Forbes. Yeah.
Article. So next week, they know their feet.
Next week. But it's disgraceful what is happening.
Tell us what's happening.
Well, the board is split, and we've got a board that is a dictate. There's a 6-member. There's 6 of them that are voting in block against, and because then there are about 3 to 4, depending on the time of the day, that are dissenters. And so now they decided in a dictatorial manner to get rid of those, especially the 3 that are writing letters to the ICC complaining about the unconstitutionality and by the way, the illegality when it comes to the United States laws in terms of denying you your rights. You cannot suspend. So what they've done, they've suspended 2 board members, and now they're going after the 3rd one, which is Patricia Whitaker, who she was a CWI captain at one time, and then she became an attorney. She became the first Black person to be on this board, and now they want to get rid of her because she's one of those who have joined as an attorney. Of course, she knows the laws, and she was part of the ICC team that wrote the Constitution. So now they're getting rid of her. They're gotten rid of in terms of suspending these 2 other board members. So the ICC is up in arms against it, but they've not been coming down strongly before now. And then the United States Olympic Committee is also up in arms. They have sent them some very strong letters telling them how dysfunctional they are. So what is going to happen here? I don't see any way that they're going to get sanctioning meaning authorize or become a member of the USOPC to play in the Olympics, which was a goal of the ICC for them to play in the Olympics. So what the USOPC intended to do is to go out and get a team. Like you can apply, you can get a team and apply to represent the United States, which would be a slap in the face of USA cricket. So that's the shameful and disgraceful thing that we're going through right now. And hopefully the ICC is going to put a stop to it come next week because, and Basil knows this, because in the previous administration, USACA, that was suspended twice and expelled to form the USAC, they did not even do a small percentage
Yeah.
of what is going on here right now, and they were suspended and expelled. So I hope that the ICC takes a good look at it and come down with the judgment that is deserving of the egregious behavior of this current board.
Yeah,
Basil?
because I just quote in here, U.S. cricket. USA cricket has been treated with kid gloves. An ICC board member told me there is no U.S. cricket, quite frankly. I agree with that assessment by the ICC board of director. I think one of the issues here, well, hopefully because you got a new, these people who are there at the ICC hierarchy were not the ones in place when this U.S. cricket was formed. So they will not have the sentiments to continue to treat them with kid gloves, because it's somewhat of an embarrassment also to the ICC, because they're the ones that came in with both guns blazing and threw out the other body that was in charge, to only replace it with a body that's even more dysfunctional than the body that they threw out, right? So that's where the situation like. And just on another quick point of U.S. cricket, in the two teams that we had at the Garfield Sobers tournament, there were several youngsters from North Carolina who have come through the hands of Alvin Kalicharan. And I have been watching, because every year Lyndon Fraser, the head coach, New York Tri-State, takes the last 7 years or so, he's been taking teams to Guyana, youth teams to play, as for development of these youngsters here. And over the years, they started streaming the game. So I've been able to see these youngsters play in the more recent times. And several of them from North Carolina. And I'm always impressed with them. And I always say to myself, Alvin doing a good job, because you've seen the results. I happened to speak to him on the phone because Sir Randy called me and he put Alvin on the phone. And I was telling Alvin, we had a bunch of youngsters there in Barbados. And I called him and said, I told them to tell you how I know. He said, yes. So, and I told one of them that you told me your first cricket bat is the over I gave you, right? And he was telling me that. So the kid said, you're going to tell him. But the thing what he said to me, he said, well, why they don't try to bring me in the thing? I said, Alvin, me, I know if you do it that part. But I could tell you that you're doing a good job, because how you see the results of the youngsters.
Right.
The Australian coach saw our youngsters and was impressed with the technique of the youngsters from the USA more than the Caribbean guys. So it's a reflection of, a reflection one, like the guys from North Carolina, there's Alvin, but these youngsters are getting exposed to pretty decent coaching at the fundamental level, whereas our youngsters in the Caribbean are not.
Yep. Hey, quickly. Let me add this, and I'm sure Dr. Hines would appreciate this, with the struggles that we have in Guyana and its governance, with the racial discrimination. And here is something that is very fundamental. And this is in the USACA days, meaning the organization before USAC was born. I mean, there was equity and I mean, there wasn't any complaint about in the teams, from, as a matter of fact, from the boardroom to the playing field. It was, everybody who, if you were good enough, you got played, everybody got an opportunity to participate. Listen to this, Dr. Hines. The under 15, the under 17, the under 19, the under 23 teams, there's not a single black player in those teams. The senior team that just finished playing in the World Cup, it has 2 black players, and they were there before USAC. They were there, going way back several years. So you can tell for decades, if ever at all, there will ever be another black player in the team, because the under 15, under 17, under 19, and under 23 team are what feeds. And it's not that people, that there aren't black players who can play. One example, We had a black player who went to the trials in California last year, coached by Fraser, made in his 4 innings 140 runs. A really good young Barbadian youngster. The kid was not picked 144 in his 4 innings, which meant he averaged 35. Another Indian player made duck in his 2 innings, and he got picked in front of him. And this player, this same black player, he made the West Indies on the 19 World Cup team in the 18, the 18 players.
Yeah, yes.
Could not make the 28 for the US team.
Okay. And right now, Vincent, he's right now in St. Vincent playing for Barbados again.
That's exactly correct.
He came by one of our matches before they left this past Monday. He came by to see the game.
Brilliant.
Dr. Hines, I would just say this. I sounded the alarm about this, what we're seeing now in U.S. cricket, more than 10 years ago. I'm talking like going back to 2008. There was a meeting at annual general meeting in Osaka, and you had all these guys from different mostly Indian, all lauding their academies in the different parts of the country.
Yeah.
And I waited when all of them finished, and I got up and I said, "Gentlemen, that's all nice what you all guys saying, but I don't see no white guys. I don't see no black guys in your academies. And you guys live in the areas where in the burbs. You're not in the urban center. You're in the suburbs. So why I'm not seeing no black guys and so on." And I say, you guys can't pat yourself on your shoulder until you take this game outside of the expatriate community. That we have to take the game outside the expatriate. You think, for example, guys started making jokes when they saw the US under 19 women team, right? I see people making jokes, well, this is an Indian B team or C team. And, I saw an Indian person make a comment, oh, they're born in USA. But that person didn't get it. You think people in the US, in mainstream and so on, are going to support a team with all those names that they can't even pronounce?
Yeah.
You got to be kidding yourself. That is the reality. And if you're not sensitive to that, you should not be part of US cricket.
And they're not. And that is the problem. They're not. Because the other thing is the corrupt practice of having the academy owners and them interconnected, and you're only picking people from the academies because when, and here's the other thing, to even get your kids into those academies, we talking $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. It's not cheap.
Nope.
And you gotta pay the coach. So those parents are expected that their kids will play for the US team. So it's all interconnected. Dr. Hines, you and I are very familiar with this friends and family thing. This here is another friends and family thing that is on the US cricket.
And that was the alarm I sounded, because you see, at that time, Dr. Hines, I was heavily involved in coaching youth cricket and even the senior cricket at the time. And when we had national tournaments, the only places we would see teams with players not South Asian on the teams was New York. I used to get 1 or 2 in New Jersey and Florida, and then you got Connecticut, might get a few, right? But everybody west of the Mississippi, it was 99.9%. And I saw this coming on the pike as far back as 2008. I said, this is not gonna this gonna cause problems. And then this whole academy thing, because in India, cricket academies is a cottage industry. Everybody got an academy. So, the Indians who come here involved with cricket, they have brought their cricket culture with this academy set up. But what it fosters, a hierarchy, because we don't have a system where any young person could come in and learn this game with not having to pay next to nothing to learn. So we have a system where we're subsidizing coaches to teach youngsters from the urban centers and so on, the working class people and so on, to play the game. These youngsters, most of these, all of these I mean, for the most part, Indian youngsters, their parents are able to afford, they have the disposable income to pay for them to go to these academies to learn to play the game, right? But I mean, the average working class person is not going to be able to do that, right? So we freezing out a large sector of our population from getting involved in this sport.
And it's not
Basil
only
Vincent Jr.
the players. It's not only players. It's people like Basil and Lyndon Fraser. Every time their name came up, and the other coach from Antigua, he lives in California. Basil was
Reginald Benjamin.
Reginald Benjamin. Every time their names come up, it just pushed aside. And these are people who are citizens of the United States. However, they pushed aside, and then they go and bring people from India as their coaches and member of the staff. So that's what's going on.
No, look at this, Dr. Hines. This last World Cup, nothing against the young ladies. I watching the game, USA playing, and I look and I see a face I see familiar. Young lady who is a strength and conditioning coach with the St. Kitts Nevis CPL franchise. And I had seen her at times with the US on the West Indies on the 19 team as the strength and conditioning coach. So I was like, what? How they get her? Right? Then we gonna find out. They went to LinkedIn. She got her profile on LinkedIn. And when they contacted her, she didn't even told them, I have a friend who's a physio. And so the two of them came in. Now, I live in the United States.
Yep.
I've been around US teams all the way back to 2006. Everybody who around cricket know about me, right? I mean, they ain't got nobody when it comes to strength and conditioning in cricket in this country could match me. And even the people within the setup, there are a couple people within the setup who know me, but nobody call me that. So when I run into some people, will ask me, Butchman, how come you ain't involved? I said, nobody don't call me my friend. I can't go and get involved without being asked to be involved.
Basil Butcher Jr., Dr. Vincent Adams here tonight. We have gone the full way because we are just past 7:30, so we're going to leave it at that, and we'll come back next week. Hopefully, we'll have some better performances from our team. Butch, I heard you mention a name there, and when we come next week, we'll talk a little bit about him because I have a lot of time for him. I looked at him very closely. Kevin Wickham from Barbados.
Yes.
Young man that I have a lot of time for.
I was very, when I got to the ground and saw him, he was actually batting. And the guy says, we come. I said, oh, thank God, I come to the right game because this bite is bat sweet. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's a beautiful, very aesthetic, pleasing to watch. And, you know, he's one of those guys on the horizon. You know, he made a couple, I think he made a couple hundreds in the first class. I remember seeing one game where he made 100. He made 100 and then some 50s. But
and he came through the ranks.
Yes, I mean
from youth cricket, the academy cricket, etc.
The Bajan guys will tell you he's probably the most talented young batsman in Barbados.
Yes, I think so.
Basil, as a heads up, is the Trent Bridge? Is that I couldn't remember. Is that Seymour friendly too, or how does the Trent Bridge?
There are times Trent Bridge can swing.
Yes, it used to swing in the old days.
It's nice to bat, you know, but I you know, it depends on what pitch they will set a flat track or whatever the case may be. But you know, England, I doubt whether they can put flat wickets like they had against the Australians because they were scared of the Australian. I don't think they are as scared of the West Indies bowling attack to set wickets that would not give the bowlers some kind of help.
Quickly, Basil. So what do you guys and Dr. Hines, what do you guys think about Azari Joseph? This man, this guy just leaking runs like crazy at this stage of his career.
I am disappointed with Azari. I think Azari, I thought Azari would be further along as a test bowler. I always use the analogy. Rabada was a dominant youth fast bowler in the World Cup in 2014. Alzari was the same in 2016. And actually, when Alzari came into that World Cup, he had more experience than Rabada had in the previous World Cup because he had already played first-class cricket for Leeward Islands. Now we look, Rabada is an all-time great. And we're still talking about Alzari's potential. Albeit, Alzari had 2 serious injuries. He had a back injury and a shoulder injury. But still, you would have expected Alzari to be the man leading. And, in that first day, 10 overs, 66
60
runs.
other runs, yeah.
I mean, you gotta stop the runs, man. If you're not getting the wickets, the thing about it too, although we people were going and I heard all kinds of things about these guys. We West Indians, as soon as we team don't do, we ready for cut everybody head off. And I said to some guys, one, and you gave the disparity in the test experience. I told him that, number one. I said, 2, those guys never played cricket in England. 3, give the English bowlers some credit, right? The English bowlers were not giving us nothing. They were not giving our guys nothing. And we batted in the worst batting conditions in the test match, right? Than the English team. So all those factors put together, this is what you're gonna get as a result. And one of the things too, Lords is a team you always hear about the famous slope. Yep. And many both batters and bowlers have been perplexed by that slope because at times you leaving alone the ball because you thought the next thing the ball come and knock your stump out. Or as a bowler, you can't get the line right because of the slope and you're bowling wayward and so on and so forth. So all those things add up. The inexperience of our guys add up. And then, look at the warm-up game. I went through the list of the players that played against us. The most first-class games played by any of those guys was 18. Right? So most of these guys were what we call reserve county players. Not even first-team county players. And they were giving us a run for money on a flat track. It was not a track that was doing anything. On a flat track, they gave us a run for money.
Alzari, and that short ball, on his day, the short ball, if used intelligently, could reap rewards. But he seems to think that is his normal, regular ball, the short ball. And
and the other thing too, everybody thought young Shamar gonna just continue from where he did in Australia. Test cricket is a big learning curve.
That's
Shamar
right.
came out the blocks. Well done to Shamar. And I remember Sir Randy saying to me, he would have loved to have a chat with Shamar because right now we on top of the world. And Sir Randy said to me, I've been there and I know when you come down on the other side, right? To let him understand, don't worry about all the adulations. Just focus on getting better every time you go out on the park, whether it's practice or play. And these conditions foreign to him. He never played in England. So they're going to have to learn very quick by the time the second test. I really think that we can give it a better showing in the second test. That's why I think that the guys would have got a little understanding of England in this first test, and I'm hoping against all hope they should give us a better account.
But Braffett got to come better. That batting is heavily dependent upon him, and he threw away his wicket. Especially in the first inning.
Oh yeah, I mean that was very uncharacteristic.
Very uncharacteristic of him. Very
uncharacteristic. It was like out of the blue, he just decided to pelt a swipe and get moved
down. Very
with
uncharacteristic.
all hands, no foot movement.
None.
Yeah. But I hope we win the toss and send the opponent in first. I don't trust us to bat first on any of them wickets in England. So here I hope we win the toss and send England because I think we stand a better chance with our bowlers bowling first rather than our batting, because you cannot come back in a test match against England when you're bowled out for 121.
You can't come back against no team.
Any
because
team.
at times in Australia, when Hodge and De Silva saved us in that first in the second test, we were 60-something for 5. You remember? I said another look like another 121, 30 bowl out. And if we did get bowled out for that, the match was over.
Yeah.
The match would have been over. You can't come back against teams of that caliber. You get bowled out for under 150 and think you're gonna be in the test. You know, all you doing now is fighting to get back in the game. And it's not like we got a lot of experience on our side to be patient and all the variables that we need for the longer format, you know? So
yeah. All right, whatever the combination they put on the park, you know, we have to go. Even as I would prefer Sinclair to come into the team, I'm not saying that to say that it will change the overall thing. I'm just saying justice for the young man because he got a good attitude. And when the chips are down and everybody is on par, I think attitude takes you over fast, and I hope they find a place to him.
Yeah, well,
You can't do worse. You can't do worse.
Yeah, Adams said something, Jimmy Adams, that he was asked specifically at a press conference after the first day about the non-selection of Sinclair. And he said they felt on this specific surface, Moti would have been a better bet than Sinclair as a bowling option. And that's why they went with Moti, right? Yeah. Now, Moti, that just tells you, Moti is not a shoe-in our 11. Because we saw that in Australia, he got dropped in the second test.
After the first match,
so depending on the surface they see, I think there's a high likelihood that we would see Sinclair in the team. And I hope if they play Sinclair, that he bats at 6 and that will drop down.
Yeah, that will go down to 8. I mean, I love Jason, you know, but all right, brothers, let's go.
All right.
The usual story after party, you gaff outside. See you all next week.
All right, good.
And thank you all for staying with us. I noticed a lot of you come in late and perhaps this 6 o'clock and cutting it with you all. But we'll see what happens. I talk to the brothers because everybody's accustomed to the program at 7 o'clock. And I think a lot of you are coming in for 7 o'clock. But we'll see you next week, and I'll let you all know whether we stick with 6 or we'll come to 7 from next week. See you all.
Rude boys gonna get you by degrees. Here comes the West Indies. And when you're facing the generals, nearly every ball is a funeral. And when we batting, brother, go and put your men on the boundary line. And if you give we a liquor, that is merely a hiccup. Look, you win the little battle, you lose the war. It's the same result every time. Everybody sing. Here comes the West Indies. Here comes the West Indies. Them rude boys gonna get you by degrees. Here